Good morning, everybody. This is June 20th, 2024. The Board of Supervisors are meeting today for budget hearings. Our meeting may continue into Friday. We will see how things move along. We will start today with a moment of silence, and I'm going to pass it on to Supervisor Green.
Thank you. Not a moment's silence for anyone who passed, but thankfully, we did have a wildfire in Scotts Valley yesterday. The response gave me a lot of confidence in our firefighting professionals, not just locally, but we had the good fortune to have a task force reassigned from another fire. Just stay safe out there. We are starting to see these fires coming up, and I know it's been a couple years since we've had the mega fires, but if you're mowing, if you're doing just common outdoor activities, make sure you know what the rules are and make sure you follow them. Thank you.
I will add to that, just to make sure to add the whole entire first responders, law enforcement, always helpful in these situations to keep it clear so that our firefighters can do the work they need to do, and also staff in working on Plan B, just in case things get out of control. And I know that it was all hands on deck. Everybody was preparing for the worst, but luckily all the work and the collaboration worked out so that it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So always appreciate it, and thank you for that moment of silence, if we can have a moment. Vice Chair Crandall, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Our first item today, item 4.1, public hearing, consideration of recommended budget for fiscal year 2024-25 for the County of Lake and special districts governed by the Board of Supervisors. And I want to pass this off to CAO Parker and Mr. Carter. Whoever wanted to kick this off.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome everybody for the first day of our budget hearing. I'd like to introduce Ms. DCAO Casey Moreno, who will be doing the initial presentation for everyone today.
Wendy, can you share the presentation? Can you open the presentation and share it? No, the one that I put on the desktop.
Yeah, I'm moving on.
Perfect.
Go back one, actually.
Why is that not going back?
It's too far away.
What?
All right, well, sit down here.
Okay. Oh, wait. Did you do that? Oh. I'll just ask Wendy to do it. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So the budget hearing for fiscal years 24-25. Okay. The budget hearing for the fiscal year 24-25 recommended budget. Next slide. So the budget priorities are to preserve general reserves and maintain a structurally balanced budget while avoiding reduction in service levels and avoiding layoffs, furloughs, and benefit reductions. The general fund increased by just over $2 million. Special revenue funds increased by $7.6 million. Capital project funds increased by about $2 million. Internal revenue funds increased by about $2.5 million. Enterprise funds decreased by a little more than $4 million, and special districts and other agencies increased by about $3.5 million. Next slide. Thank you. So as you can see with the bar graph, each fund group perfectly matches the revenue and anticipated FPA with the appropriations and reserve adjustments. So this pie chart is all county revenues by their source. The majority of county revenues are provided by the state at 48%. Tax and federal revenue are pretty even at 17% and 16% respectively. So this is all county appropriations by their source. Services and supplies are slightly higher than salaries and benefits at 34% and 31% respectively. Construction in progress accounts for 16% of the county appropriations, and other charges follows at 12%. Looking at general fund specifically, 46.55% of general fund revenue is made up of taxes. About a quarter is from the state, with the remaining from interest, charges for services, and other minor sources. For general fund appropriations, just over half the general fund appropriations are salary and benefits. 30% is services and supplies, with the remaining being contingency, construction in progress, capital asset, and others. Okay. So if all county positions were filled, it would cost about $121 million, excluding overtime cash outs and extra help positions. If all general fund positions were filled based on filled and unfilled positions that are currently on the position allocation, we are looking at just over $53 million. With overtime of another $4 million, we are looking at $57 million for the 24-25 fiscal year with all positions filled. With the appropriations departments are requesting, general fund would need $101,278,410. And that's assuming everything is spent. So the anticipated revenues are just over $79 million, with the remaining being carryover from the current 23-24 fiscal year. If the entire budget was spent and no additional revenues came in, we would end the year with no carryover for next year. Go back one. Yeah, sorry. Luckily, general fund does not utilize all of the funds which have been approved, so we have continued to have carryover each year. We have been seeing a significant increase in the past few years, starting in 22-23, which was about $4.5 million less than what was approved 1 year prior. The budget for the current year is significantly higher, with the proposed budget for 24-25 slightly higher. The blue line is the appropriation limit established by the state, calculated by the auditor's office, and approved by your board. As you can see, until this fiscal year, we didn't come close to allocating funds which would exceed that limit. This fiscal year, with the proposed 24-25 fiscal year budget, we are over that allowable limit. After research and conversations with the auditor's office, we are actually under this limit because capital offset is excluded. Nonetheless, this is something we will be keeping a close eye on and make sure that we remain under that limit. Changes to general fund positions. The Registrar of Voters is removing one election specialist and replacing it with an election specialist senior. Buildings and Grounds is reducing the full-time allocation of the lead janitor to a 3/4 time allocation. Engineering is removing the assistant engineer senior and replacing it with an assistant engineer 1/2. Sheriff is removing 2 deputy sheriffs and 2 deputy sheriff correction positions. Code enforcement is adding 1 office assistant and 1 code enforcement officer. And I apologize, on the memo it said 2 code enforcement officers were being added, but they're actually unfunding 2 of those. Planning is changing the staff service analyst to a flex 1/2. Parks and Recs are adding 1 parks maintenance worker. Museums is changing the assistant curator to a full-time position. And overall, general fund departments are reducing by one allocation. So based on a report provided by Human Resources on June 4th, the general fund departments have a 20% vacancy, whereas the other non-general fund departments have a 21% vacancy. And these calculations are based on both funded and unfunded positions. General fund departments with greater than 25% vacancy are Public Works Admin, IT, Engineering, Inspection, Public Defender, just to name a few. On the right are the other funds with authorized positions and vacancy rates. So secured property tax has continued to increase steadily, and we expect this year to follow in line with that. For every dollar received from secured property taxes, 57.67% goes to schools, 26.51% goes to the county, 7.55% goes to fire, 6.03% goes to districts, and 2.24% goes to cities. Of the county portion, 23.04% goes to general fund, 1.22% goes to library, 1.19% goes to roads, and water gets 0.96%. So cannabis tax from both cultivation and business actually had a significant increase after we had prepared this budget. So you'll see the proposed 24-25 is less than what we have received and anticipate to receive this year. So at final recommended budget, we will increase that to being in line with what we received this year. In May, we received a little over $1 million from the second installment of cannabis taxes. So sales tax, after a significant increase the past few years, we are seeing a slight decline, and this is offset with the increase in property taxes. So we have had a minimal, if anything, change. So we are still bringing in the revenue that we are anticipating. Transient occupancy tax is anticipated to continue to slightly increase. Over the past 5 years, we are seeing an average of $1 million. Contingencies and reserves. At this time, we are not anticipating any changes to contingencies or reserves, with the exception of the loan repayment from behavioral health in the amount of $3 million. There are a number of capital projects which either have been in progress or are near completion. A few notable projects are the Armory, which is partially funded by ARPA, various roads and bridges and at just over $23 million, Public Health's medical van, various parks projects, and various special districts projects. So the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, so the county has until December 31st of this year, 2024, to have expended or be under contract for the amount of funds the ARPA committee has allocated. Once we are under contract, we have until December 31st of 2026 to spend those funds. There are various projects which have not had funds claimed yet. The ARPA committee will be meeting next month to discuss reallocating funds to ensure we don't have to pay anything back. And this data is based on the last quarter that was reported, which ended on March 31st. So a few new anticipated needs from general fund is the new courthouse. Once they break ground on the new courthouse, we should start anticipating putting money aside to purchase back the 4th floor and renovate it. We are also working on a compensation study, and so that we are planning on bringing back recommendations to your board in October. As long as everything goes smoothly, we should have that here shortly. Ongoing ARPA projects, most of the ARPA was one-time expenses. However, there were a few approved that will have ongoing expenses. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Appreciate the level of detail. We have a question from Supervisor Pyska.
I have a question about the fourth floor. What do we anticipate that buyout to be?
We really don't know at this point. Once they break ground, we'll have to start having conversations with them.
Okay, so it does sound like something significant that we have to plan for.
Yeah.
Last time I looked into it, it would easily be between 2 and 3 million. So we'd have to get updated information from both the state and appraisal.
And that's the buyout and not the renovation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we might have answers.
Not necessarily an answer, just a little bit more information. There has to be an appraisal done. The state has to cause that to be performed. So what they said, more information to come, but it is an appraisal-based data. That's really what it's going to be driven by.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd love to offer a suggestion. I know that we did a trade of a property for the Armory. I'm wondering if, because of the need of housing still being quite critical here in Lake County, if that's a possibility rather than actually forking out some money for the fourth floor. I know we have other properties, if that's a possibility.
We can look into it further.
Any further questions? I do have a question for staff. Do we have any, I think it's HDL, are the folks that provide us information. Are there projections for where they believe that our sales tax is going to go and other things of that kind? Just because I know our budget, I'm so thankful that we're seeing positive trends when I'm hearing from other areas that they're really having to figure out how to clamp down and cut back on services and other things. And this is not our case here today that we're going to be discussing that, but I'm wondering what kind of projections you're seeing in the next 2, 3, 5 years.
So with HDL, we do get projections. I'm hesitating because I don't have the reports with me to tell you exactly what's on them. But for final budget, we would adjust related to anything that comes up with the HGL projections. Statewide, it's always been going lower than the Bradley Burns, which is local, which we're always 2 years behind, which I believe you guys are aware. So that's why we weren't hit very hard on Bradley Burns, but we were hit on the Prop 172 sales tax. And with just a quick note on that, on the numbers that Casey provided, it also had, it was low by 419,000, and the reason for that is the auditor's office accrued back one of the months of sales tax, which last year was the first year they did that, so we have to catch up to the 12 months of sales tax data, so it's not even as bad as it looked. But I would have to get back to you with more information because I don't have it with me.
If it's possible to bring for the final budget hearing in September, I think that would be useful to at least kind of see the landscape of where we're heading into.
Sounds good.
So we were expecting to see a decline.
Yeah,
We've talked about that the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's what I expected. Just a general comment, I guess. This was brought up the year before. I know that if we do fill up 100% of our salaries and continue to try to provide the same level of services, that right now we have a lot of one-time money kind of floating around to help us out here and there. I know that we got rid of our fiscal crisis management plan, which was supposed to reduce our position allocations, not layoffs, but positions that we're not filling by a certain percentage point. We didn't finish that. We cleared out the fiscal crisis management plan in light of all the raises that we provided in 2021, I think it was when we started. But it's something that I worry about, especially as projections may not look as positive in the future, that we might want to take a look at those things, and obviously without hurting what we have currently, but alleviating some of the pains of trying to balance our budgets and trying to keep up with the services that we have. Because we still do, no matter what we've done, obviously what we've done have not allowed us to get a larger vacancy rate, so that's good. but we're still at that 20% as it was stated. And so there's a lot of positions that are unfilled at this moment in time. So just wanted to bring it up. I don't have a specific ask, but just something that I pay attention to, especially as we see those projections. If there's no further questions, I guess I'm going to open it up for the public. If there's any questions specific on this portion. And I'm not on Zoom at this moment. I apologize. No hands up on Zoom. Thank you. Okay. So let's go ahead, and I believe you wanted to ask for a 5-minute break. Correct?
Looks like we can move in.
Okay. 5-minute break is gone. Okay, we will go on, and Ms. Moreno, if you can please let us know who is our first to go on our budget hearings.
So first up, we have the Ag Department. It's found on page D, 157.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Sabatier and board members. Catherine Vanderwall, Agricultural Commissioner and Sealer of Weights and Measures. Before I get started this morning, I would like to take a moment to thank my administrative assistant, Avella Gayton, in her support in preparing the budget, as well as support from the admin office. So would you like me to go through, I have 3 budget units. Would you like me to go through each?
Yes.
Okay. So Budget Unit 2601 is the main budget for the Agriculture Department in Weights and Measures. So this department is responsible for ensuring fairness and equity in the marketplace, protecting and promoting agriculture, the public, and the environment through the various programs that we administer. So some of these programs include our insect trapping program, which is critical to our local producers in safeguarding Lake County's environment and agricultural commodities. And this also allows producers to export their commodities out of state and out of country. So other programs include safe pesticide use, certified farmers markets, inspecting incoming plant shipments and agricultural parcels. So in the weights and measures side, my department tests all commercial weighing and measuring devices. And this ensures that the consumer is getting what they are paying for, whether it's filling up at the gas station or buying groceries at a store. So there are no significant increases in this budget unit for fiscal year 24-25. I am requesting to carry over funding for the capital asset listing to replace our 1982 International Weight Truck. So this was approved by your board during the fiscal year 22-23 budget year. The truck body itself has been secured and paid for, and there was a delay in the crane shipment, which was coming from overseas. And at the time, it was bound for the port of Baltimore. I have received word in the last month that the crane has been received, and it is secured, so they are expecting to finish the build on the truck in the next few months. And I do have one thing that wasn't mentioned for my position allocations. When I submitted my budget information, the administrative assistant position, I requested it to be a flex position. So that would be an administrative assistant / senior.
Okay. I heard.
Well, I was just going to say, it is notated, so it would need to be, we'll list everything that when the appropriate position allocation is finalized in the end. There's actually about 3 changes. This will be one of them.
Okay. And that will be one of them. Awesome.
I just didn't want to forget that one. Are there any questions for this budget unit?
And just for clarification, you're not adding to your position allocations, you're making one of them be flex.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
I see no questions. Please
Okay.
keep going.
Okay, so next budget unit is 2701. This is the Fish and Game Protection and Propagation Fund. So this budget supports projects that improve the habitat for wildlife and fisheries in the county and is funded by a percentage of state fish and wildlife fines, penalties, and forfeitures. So my department manages this budget for the Lake County Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee. The committee receives project ideas from the community and then recommends these projects to your board for approval. So some of the projects approved by your board this current fiscal year include funding for the Clear Lake Science Symposium, as well as the carp removal project. Are there any questions for this budget unit?
See no questions. That one's simple enough.
Okay. And then my third budget unit is 2714, and this is the Biological Community Fund. So this budget unit funds the USDA Wildlife Services Program, which provides assistance to the public with nuisance wildlife, and covers one full-time and one half-time wildlife specialist that's assigned to Lake County. The program protects public health and safety, reduces livestock depredation, and mitigates property damage caused by wildlife. In fiscal year 23-24, as of March 17th, a total of 468 people in the county were assisted with nuisance wildlife. So this program is beneficial to the Lake County residents, and I would like to ask that your board continue to support this program. Is there any questions for this budget unit?
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I hesitate to ask, but I have to. I know a couple years ago, the state was taking a look at mute swans, and I don't know if we've ever tackled that under this budget unit.
No.
Okay.
No. I believe that is a project that's being worked on through the State Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Okay, well, as I heard, no. So
Okay.
between this fund and the state, next time you talk to them, I'm just inquire. I'd love to see some progress from either the state or this budget unit.
Yeah, but this is, to my understanding, USDA, which this supports, has not been asked to be involved in that.
Okay, thank you.
And no further questions at this moment. Appreciate your budgets. The changes are not dramatic at all. It's the normal increase that we would usually typically expect. Too bad about the truck. We were so excited when we approved it, did not know it was part of the Baltimore issue there. But glad that it's on its way and that it'll get hopefully completed this year. That's fingers are crossed for that. And so let's go ahead and open it up for any public comment on those three budget units. See nobody in the chambers getting up and no hands in the Zoom room, and so bring it back to the board for action.
Are we?
Usually we approve each set of budget units
Oh, right.
at a time rather than going through the whole list at the end. So I'm looking for action to approve budget unit 2601, 2701, and 2714 as presented.
There's going to be an amendment, correct, for the flex position? We need to add that in.
And that'll be in the position allocation when we approve that part, not within the budget itself.
Correct. It's not in the appropriations.
I'll motion to approve those budget units as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to pivot a little bit here. We have a separate item that we're going to take up now. It's actually exactly 9:30 a.m., so we're going to pause on item 4.1 and move on to 4.2. Sitting as the Lake County Air Quality Management District Board of Directors, LCAQMD, fiscal year 24-25 draft budget hearing, June 20th, 2024, budget units 8799 and 8798. Director Gerhart, good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Board. Thank you. I'm sorry, just getting everything out. So, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so today this is our draft budget hearing for the Air Quality Management District. We're a little bit different. We're required to have this hearing as part of California Health and Safety Code, Section 40131, where we take public comment and at least 2 weeks prior to adoption of the final budget. So this meets that requirement, and fits in perfectly with the county's adoption of their draft budget as well. So what we've done for 30-plus years now is have our draft budget presented, and then we have just kind of our general policies that we follow for updates or board direction to come back and have further discussions later, if that's the desire of the board. So that's just kind of a way to present some information quickly so that we can get a little direction and make sure that we're still on the right track for the budget and then move forward throughout the year. So with that, our budget unit 8799 is our primary operating budget, which has all of our staffing, maintaining clean air monitoring, inspections, enforcement, everything that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, state reporting, all sorts of things. We are looking at, I'm not even following my notes anymore, sorry. We are looking at a fee rule update to this year because with all the impacts of the staffing, the increases in wages and things, we've been able to absorb those for multiple years, but we've hit the point now where it's impacting our ability to come to full staffing. That plus some other issues with staffing. So the new fee rule will implement that, and we hope to have that to this board. I'm hoping the end of next month. There's lots of hoops we have to jump through in order, to finalize it and get it to this board for consideration. So it's still in the works, and right now we're down to 3 people, so it's things take a little more time than we anticipated. So that is the major change this year, is the revenue side. Expenses are, as everyone knows, expenses are always going up. All of our equipment comes from, it's technical equipment, so it is expensive. When we buy monitors, they've gone from $10,000 to $20,000. Things, we can't buy things on the cheap, so we're stuck with the going rate because we have to meet all the state and federal requirements. So expenses, everything goes up for us, and there's no way for us to avoid it. So with that, our budget is increasing. We are hoping to get, work toward full staffing, but we don't expect that this year. And the next 1 to 2 years once the board has the new fee schedule, it will take us probably 2 years to fully implement that because it is a significant change. Our fee schedule has been the same structure since the 70s. So it's a very different change, a very different scenario. So that'll take a lot of staff time, and we'll be spending a lot of time with that and our burn program because we're taking over that online burn permitting system. And it's going to be managed through our office as a central point. So there's going to be a lot of staff resources required, and at the moment that's a significant burden on us. So with that, the budget itself is fairly standard. Otherwise, we do have some reserve issues that I believe Mr. Carter's going to address.
So when the fund summary, if you look at the fund summary in the budget book, the reserves for 299 are actually incorrect. This isn't a part of what you specifically approved, but for Fund 299, Budget Unit 8799, on the fund summary, there should be $320,062. $100,000 should be restricted O&M. $10,530 should be Small Business AB 2588 assistance. $1,560 should be air monitoring equipment. $100,000 should be restricted for buildings, and $107,972 should be restricted for vehicle replacement.
So just for clarification, I believe the current reserves document that we have says it's supposed to be at $50,063, and you're saying it should be $320,062?
Yes.
Okay.
What's currently in the book is 2 years old. So
Okay.
a year
And then
and a
there's
half
that.
ago, we adopted the board adopted the resolution to transfer the funds, so it just somehow got missed in the update.
Yeah, all these were already in reserves by June 30th of last year, actually, so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that update and clarification. Anything further?
On this budget unit, not unless you have questions.
I believe it is this budget unit, well, let me check first if my colleagues have any questions. Obviously, I have a feeling I know the answer. It's you're dealing with some challenges with staffing, but I've seen on your capital assets that there's been a long-term effort to get the solar installation. It seems to be separate from the capital asset project of the courthouse solar. Is it completely separate and you're taking that out on your own, or is that in conjunction with our public services?
We've been in talks with Public Services to see if we can tie into their contract, but at the moment, that's not happening. So it'll probably be a separate project at some future date, so.
Okay.
Because it's, yeah.
And one of my reasons for bringing it up as well is the potential for savings. It's not going to be immense, but running an office full-time, it still has utility costs and whatnot, and the solar installation would be helpful as you try to readjust what your rates need to be. Do you have a timeline of when you anticipate that might be accomplished?
If we can get up to, 75% staffing, then we can probably start working on the planning for that within the year. But right now, we're less than 50% staffing, so it's, we need at least 2 more staff before we can really get to that.
Okay.
And recruitment is challenging for our positions. So just as a awareness, the people we're competing for experienced air quality, there's probably 50 people in the state that do what we do that would be willing to work for a smaller district. LA, Bay Area, San Joaquin, they have professional engineers. We're competing for the other engineers that are working for all the other air districts, and that's probably a pool of about 50. So trying to attract someone with experience is very challenging.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Well, looks like we have no further questions. Let's move on to the next budget unit.
And 8798 is formerly the APCO Trust Fund, but now it's the carryover from that, but also we use it for our grant funds. So it's basically grant programs is the primary revenue and expenditure from that. We do have a reserve for legal assistance and a few minor things like that in that fund, but it's primarily a grant-based fund at this point. So it's where we put the funds for grants that have to be tracked separately until we can expend those as part of the grant program. So those vary year to year based on what we anticipate for the grant programs, and with the state, that can vary quite a bit from year to year. So we do have an issue where we are running into timeframes of our priority is the air quality benefit, where grants have specific timeframes, and so we may lose some grants in the coming year just because we don't have staff time to process them properly to meet all the state requirements. But we're doing our best to not have that happen, but just to be aware that some of those funds may go back to the state.
Okay.
So
I would request that maybe you let us know what those potential grants are, because I know, like, for example, Supervisor Simon has reminded Lake Transit Authority to connect with Air Quality Control to see what can be possible for green buses, things like that, and maybe we can get a little bit more activity to try not to get those funds going back to the state level, depending on what the state does.
Yeah. A lot of it is our staff time too. It's, just to do one bus, it's probably, just to do the application, it's 80 to 100 hours of staff time just for one bus, and then inspections and follow-up and reporting, and so it just adds up. And if we have emergencies or other things going on, that's where the problem comes in, is being able to get all of that workload in a normal with a very short staffing. So we're doing our best to avoid that and get people on board. But
Any other questions for this budget unit? Please.
Quick question on 23-90. So your admin services, a fair chunk of an increase in there. So you're looking to outsource some additional staff work that you're not able to get hired inside?
that's the 87 through the county, and that is whatever the county charges us. I don't think our costs haven't significantly increased, but it's the program and the averaging that increases. So
That's a piece of cost allocation plan, which is also known as the A87 plan. The auditor's office has a contractor who does the calculation for that, and that means that the overall expenses that, not necessarily just for your department, but IT expenses that are spread, the admin office expenses that are spread, the auditor's office, treasurer, and so on, where the general fund departments that provide services to all the other budget units, those expenses are then spread to the departments to pay, which is the cost allocation plan, and we bring them in to budget unit 1120. That's been done for decades, and that's the way it's always been, but that's not a good answer. But that, Genevieve, do you want to
Looks more like a,
explain what the 87 cost allocation plan is?
anyway.
Did a great job of it. I mean, it is to offset the cost of the service.
I'm sorry that you got called on, but we're going to need you to come to the microphone. It was unexpected.
I mean, Stephen did a great job of explaining it. So it's designed to offset the cost of the services. So I'm not sure what the question is.
And if we can get your name, please.
Genevieve Harrington, Auditor Controller, County Clerk.
Thank you so much.
Well, the
Absolutely.
question is, it's from 2023 to 24 adopted at 8K, now it's going to 30K. So if this is just one line item and we're going to see similar increases in other departments, I guess my question is more like, whoa, that's spreading quite a bit. So it's stated correctly in the budget, so for your budget unit, I guess that answers the question. And maybe at some future time, we'll say, why did the spread get so big?
A lot of the increases overall are the increases in salaries, but for a specific question and on a specific budget unit regarding a fluctuation, I'd need to look into the calculation, which I can do. So if anytime there's a question, usually they just send an email.
Yeah. And we can catch up later, thank you.
Absolutely.
I will just, to the point, sometimes it is challenging because there are significant jumps at times. And being a special district, we could pay a direct bill, which is what we would rather have because our funding is an annual funding, so we get paid per year, nothing carries over. So it's our permit fees for 1 year, pay for services for that year. So it would be much easier for us to pay as we went, but that's not the process that works for the county. So, we do have the 87, which just sometimes, sometimes it's great and it works out well, and sometimes, there's jump and we have to make adjustments at the final budget to accommodate those changes. So.
Thank you very much.
I just add one more point to that, Doug, that is something that you can reach out about. A direct bill is another way that can be handled through the cost allocation plan. So feel free to send an email and we can look into that.
Okay.
Perfect. And that would be you.
Sorry. My bad.
I'm glad you brought that up, and thank you very much for letting them know that that's available. And I think that it's easy to jump to conclusions with things that have been adopted. Right. You really have to look at the history of the actuals, because I know there's times I see the adopted and actuals can be almost 50%, and it seems continuously. I mean, especially we look at what your anticipated revenues are versus the actuals. As you say, you don't know from what the state's going to provide for you, and it kind of gives you that surprise of how it is that you can deal with your appropriations. And same thing, your appropriations jump from really high expectations to the reality of what you had and what you could spend. Yeah. So I think that looking at adopted numbers, you need to really go back at the history of the actuals to see what is the true trend, because these are simply projections at this moment in time. And so even though it is 30, it may not be anything more than 15. We'll see what happens.
Usually it doesn't change that much, but just to be honest. Yeah.
It can.
But other items will, yes.
Yes.
So.
Any further questions on these two budget units?
I just wanted to say one clarifying thing with the cost allocation plan. It's the current year charges and then a 2 years back reconciliation. So if anything is overcharged from actuals, it's adjusted 2 years later, plus or minus to the current year estimated. So it does catch up.
Basically, we do right in the long run. It may not be perfect right away. Okay, let's go ahead and open up for public comment. I see no hands in Zoom, nobody getting up in the chamber, and so I'll bring it back to the board for action on these two budget units.
Do them both at once?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, sitting as the Lake County Air Quality Management District Board of Directors for FY 24-25 draft budget, units 8798 and 8799. Cover it? Perfect.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And do we have direction on the additional items, if you've had a chance to look at them, whether you would like to consider them or have us bring them back later to discuss as a separate item?
And I apologize.
The general policies.
I would say we'd like to see them come back to us so we could have greater conversations so we can get through the budget hearing.
Okay.
Is that in agreement with consensus from the board?
Yes.
Apologize for not giving direction today, but please put it on the agenda as quickly as possible so we can provide that guidance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is probation, Budget Unit 2302, found on page D150, and their requested appropriations equals $7,484,464.
Good morning.
Not used to going so early. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair and Board. I'd like to begin with thanking admin for their assistance in preparing our budget and my staff, Cindy Rodriguez and Kevin Lewis. The probation department is tasked with providing to the court information and reports in the form of pre-sentence reports, violations of probation, pretrial conduct and memorandums, supervision of adult offenders, and public safety by using evidence-based practices to encourage the change of behaviors, providing access to resources, and connecting individuals to services and programs. Supervision and custody of juveniles who come in contact with justice system, from traffic tickets to serious felonies. We've housed youth in Tehama County for the last 7 years, and I wanted to make your board aware that within the next 2 weeks, it is my intention to move the youth that we have in Tehama County to Mendocino County. We had previously housed youth in Mendocino County, and there were some hiccups in the programming that was received, which caused us to move to Tehama, and we're going to give Mendocino County a try again to make sure that our families are closer to the youth and they get this needed services closer to home. So that should be coming in the next 2 weeks. The accomplishments for this year, we have collaborated with the jail and taken our programming classes that we provide outside into the custody setting so that those that are coming out on supervision can start meeting their case plan goals before they're in the community. We had a successful resilient reentry event with Woodland College. We had more than 40 providers and 100 in attendance. Over the next year, probation will strengthen its collaboration with behavioral health by co-locating its services for justice-involved individuals in Lower Lake. And we anticipate beginning enhanced case management services through CalAIM. We will continue to hire caring, intelligent, and dedicated individuals who aim to make a difference in Lake County. Currently, our vacancy rate overall in the department is about 25%, but for the deputy probation position, it is 30%. We do have one change, and I'm hoping admin can help me with that.
So there is, within the FBA, probation has some carryover dollars, which is not normal for general fund, but it was a unanticipated revenue. And we did not put those capital assets in the budget, and I was informed by Ms. Monfrans that they're already in progress. So budget, account number 40-70, instead of just adding appropriations, we're going to move it within the budget unit and then replenish the funds during final so that there isn't too big of a change. Account 4070, decrease it by $472,821. Account 2391, increase it by $75,821. That's for 2 vehicles. So that is where it would go transferred over to Public Works, roads, not roads, for the vehicles. And then account 6272, which is a capital asset, $57,000 for 1 vehicle. And the reason why the vehicles are in 2 different accounts is the $57,000 in 6272 is a brand-new vehicle that wasn't already in the pool. The 2 that are paid for out of 2391 were already in the pool being replaced, so they're different. And then when the new vehicle comes in, they would transfer the asset. And the last change would be account 6313. That is for a solar project, $304,000. 40, sorry. My bad. 340,000 even.
So I got a quick question about the last 2, the 6272 and the 6313 that we're changing and adding the 52,000 and the 340. Are we also adding that to our capital assets list where right now probation has nothing on there?
Correct.
Okay. And that'll be a separate,
That change would need to be when you approve the capital
when we
assets
approve that
list.
at the end of this? Okay. Just wanted to make sure and check in. Okay. Anything further?
No.
All right. Any questions or comments? Appreciate seeing your department just about everywhere that I'm a part of. Obviously, there's a recognition of a need to reduce recidivism and doing great work to try and limit that as much as possible, and I really greatly appreciate that. I think that's all that I have on here. I know that, no, I do have one more thing. I do have concerns about our state budget, not our budget, and I see that it feels like you've recognized the potential losses, but there are, at least on the table, we'll see what happens when it's fully done, where prison inmates being released, there were some automatic funds that were typically provided to the counties, or it's been automatic for at least the last few years, that have been completely expunged from coming to the county. So I do have concern that with your vacancy rates that you just provided, so I hope that we can maybe hear from you in the near future on what incentives might be needed to help you fill those in as you don't realize those funds coming from the state that can help you to ensure that we are capturing all those people coming out and being put on the right path. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, it's not a budget thing, but I want to congratulate you on the move to Mendocino County. But I was wondering if we could, at a later time, get an update on that, because it's not just programming, but it's also facilities, right? So, and I'm not aware personally of, I'm sure Tehama County was all that. It's great welcome news that they're moving closer to home, but it's both the facility and the services being provided. So would love to hear more about that transition at some appropriate time in the future.
There's no further comments or questions. Open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on these budget units? Nobody. Okay, I'll bring it back. We have some amendments that were provided by administration, and I'm sure we could just state exactly that.
Okay, I'll move to approve Budget Unit 2302 for the Probation Department as amended and as ably described by our staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, CAO Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can we respectfully request a 5-minute
We will
break?
take a 5-minute break. We will reconvene at 10:01. Thank you for everybody's patience, and I'm going to go back to our DCAO for where we are and who's next.
So next up, we have behavioral health, starting on page D238 with requested appropriations of $27,154,240, presented by Director Jones.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board. Thank you so much. I just have our fiscal manager, Amber, up here in case there's any questions that get a little too sophisticated for me. But we are growing. I think that's quite obvious. To address the elephant in the room, first of all, with our budget, let's see, we have payment information. I want to tell you guys all, we just received, I think we've received over $3 million in payments so far from the SUDS SUD treatment side. Our largest dollar amount expense with the SUDS budget is our contract with New Life. We've been meeting weekly with the Department of Healthcare Services to resolve the billing latency issues that we've been experiencing and myriad billing issues. And we're now seeing claims being approved at with a less than 1% denial rate. So that's like huge for us. It was really good to see the state step up and do what they needed to do, and it gave me hope that they can do that for the rest of the system as well. On the mental health side, we're starting to see revenues come in similar to what we used to at about $1 million a month-ish. So like essentially we're up to normal, I would say, billing. We still have a backlog of billing, and in our budget, which I'll get to in a moment, it's inflated. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but because of the loan repayment, and $4 million to general fund, $3 million, and then social services is $1 million. So it's larger than normal because we've factored in that repayment into our budget. And we are moving to billing weekly for services as opposed to monthly. As to not to clog the billing mechanism, I don't know how else to explain it, but just to have an even cadence of billing. So with that said, and of course happy to answer any more questions about our billing status. I just wanted to highlight some of the changes. So for our mental health 4014 budget, we are seeing an increase in almost $5 million, so about $4.9 million. Of course, you recognize that $4 million of that is directly a result from our loan repayment. So a truer representation of our increases is almost $1 million, so $991,000. We're primarily seeing increases in our mental health budget come from just overall costs are absolutely skyrocketing across every sector. So it costs money to feed and care and house people in care, just as it does in our communities, and so those costs have all gone up. And we are, as I've previously spoken about, seeing increases in hospitalizations, which are particularly expensive. We do have a goal of bringing people back into county and are exploring ways that we can do that economically for people who primarily are on conservatorship or things like that. Our goal over the next several years will be to bring people back in county for a variety of reasons. Of course, one of them is to control costs, but it's happening. We have a total expenditure estimate of $27 million and some change, and total revenue expected for the 4014 budget of $26 million, and we have a $600,000 about carryover. Our position allocation last year was 105, and this year it will be 109, and I believe those 3 extra staff are probably going to mobile crisis. Fortunately, we did receive nearly, was it like $750,000 worth of grant funding your board just approved actually for me to sign. So we'll be seeing those funds touch down and actually reimburse us for some of the staffing and other related costs for our mobile crisis program. So that's nice to have, and how we're able to grow those 2 positions for our mobile crisis program. Mobile crisis is absolutely exploding. Which is good, I guess. We're finally actually really meeting the needs of our community. For our budget unit SUDS 4015, we're seeing an increase of about $866,000. Our total expenditure estimate for this year is about 15 million for SUDS, and then our total revenues are anticipated to be around 14.7 million, with our carryover at $530,000. Last year we had a position allocation of 24 FTEs. This year we have it of 30 FTEs. This is in preparation for the organized delivery system, and I'm pleased to report to your board that we have officially received approval from the Department of Healthcare Services to go live on July 1st. Here in the next couple of weeks, we will be coming forward with a resolution which will authorize me to sign the standard agreement retroactively. It won't probably get here before July 1st, but it will be retroactively dated to the 1st, so that will offer expanded benefits to all of our substance use disorder beneficiaries. So those are the budget highlights. And then, of course, I think DUI has its own tiny little budget, and there's really nothing notable. It's pretty much business as usual. DUI pays for itself, and it's very stable. So with that said, I'm happy to try to answer any questions your board may have.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, on the SUDS, budget unit 4015, line item 79-90, what's the increase in miscellaneous?
One moment. I'm in the budget. Are you in the budget form?
I'm on page D 243, and I see increase under miscellaneous of close to $500,000 on line item 79-90. And it looks like income, which is good, but just didn't know what the miscellaneous was.
We're looking. Sorry. It's an increase in expense, not revenue, right?
It says revenue.
Says revenue. I believe that's the opioid settlement funds.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Appreciate the summary that you provided. Opioid settlement fund, since that was the last thing that was mentioned. I know that when I sat down with DCAO Carter to, or ACAO, sorry, never remember the exact title, I apologize for that, that the number that we were looking at was maybe a little lower than what it actually is when I was looking in the reserves. So on the reserves, I was trying to figure out where we're putting those funds for the opioid settlement, and I remember, and I could be incorrect on my recollection, that we had discussed that those funds were not up to date as far as the opioid settlement, because I believe they're being placed in the substance use
On the
budget unit.
In the fund summary, it's showing up as both an opioid settlement reserve and a general reserve. That general reserve is all opioid settlement. So the fund summary is a little off there. And yeah, it doesn't look to be the entire amount that has been received.
It is not.
And the department head can speak to why not all of it is in the reserve.
I suppose I defer to Amber, because it should be well over $1 million. We did allocate $600,000 to our behavioral health continuum infrastructure improvement plan, which would take that down, and that's for our South Shore Clinic, which is moving forward. So expansion and revitalization of that clinic. So I believe this is after that $600,000 is taken out in holding in anticipation. So if we don't get that award, it will go back, but we're hopeful that we do get that award.
Okay, because I believe it says there's 519, and that was about 700,000 or something along those lines for the South Shore Clinic?
No, we earmarked 600,000 as a match.
Okay. So then my next question is, and this was in your, I think it was in your summary, or it was in a summary, that you're adding a business analyst or a software analyst to help out with the EHR. And I'm just looking historically here at your position allocations. Currently, unfortunately, I see you at a pretty high vacancy rate of about 27% as a whole for behavioral health itself. Because of the, I'll just be blunt, I feel uncomfortable with the way the budget is and what some of these asks are without having repaid the loans back. Once those loans are repaid back, then I feel very comfortable in figuring out how to move forward. And so one of those issues that I have in my concerns is you're adding more staff, some specifically to deal with this. With the amount of vacancies that you have, is it possible to unfund a position in order to fund this new position rather than continuously adding more, where now it just has the potential that it increases the budget by adding another position on top of the issues of having a $4 million loan and the uncertainty of what the state is going to do. We've been seeing trickling amounts coming in throughout this whole time that we've been struggling with the state. In my opinion, until we've repaid the loans, that doesn't mean that the problem has been completely solved. So I'm a little concerned about the increase in the budget. I believe your appropriations or the revenues are definitely going to go up because you're owed so much money. You're going to get a whole lot more than usual. I appreciate the change in process to bill weekly. That way you're not waiting for 3 months to go by before you finally get your bills processed and you start seeing reimbursement. Now it's going to be a week to week to week, and you're going to see a little bit more of a trickle. So I appreciate those changes, but I'm just kind of, I'm uncomfortable that I don't feel like there's any guardrails when right now your reserves are at zero. We've borrowed from other departments in order to make it possible to continue doing the work, and we're increasing the anticipation of what can be done. And as a Board of Supervisor, I'm feeling unsafe in maneuvering in that way. I can definitely say that I trust you and that you'll be spending it appropriately, but I also feel that guardrails are a necessary part of moving forward. And that's just me, but love to hear feedback on that.
Yeah, we've maintained a high vacancy rate intentionally. I probably shouldn't even say that out loud, but it's true. We have not flown positions to wait and see how things go. And so this is like our best case scenario, right? We're planning optimistically for a future where things do work out. And that's been consistently my ethos in leadership, is planning for the best case scenario. And part of, again, that vacancy rate is because we haven't flown positions. We added a whole bunch of, like 13 positions, I want to say, last time. And we didn't fill a lot of them because we were in this budget position. So we're absolutely going to not fly positions and recruit for them if it doesn't remediate itself. And you are correct, is that one of the BSA positions, we're definitely needing more support in that arena, especially as we go into ODS and we have to do more technical assistance for our contractors to access our EHR and whatnot. So it is really a tightrope of balancing this period of once in a generation period of investment and growth, which is truly happening at the state level, with being cautious. It's definitely a challenge right now, and I don't think that we're unique in that. So that's been our position, is we have this high vacancy rate, and we'll continue to dole out recruitments as we feel more comfortable with the monies rolling in.
And whether vacancies are high rate of vacancy or low rate of vacancy, that still doesn't change the fact that billing can still happen, because individuals within the community can access Medi-Cal services that then has to be billed through you, where you have to pay off the contractor, but you may not get the, so whether you have vacancies or not, the issue that you're dealing with continues to potentially intensify or exacerbate, whatever the case might be. I don't know how my colleagues feel about that. It feels awkward to me to keep adding. I believe what I'm seeing is we added 15 positions from 22-23 to 23-24, and that's over the course of the whole year, maybe not just at the budget time. And so we added 15, and now we're looking at adding 5 more, but yet you have 78 positions filled. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to be a little bit more comfortable, just because the state gives me a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainties as to where we're going. And where else, and I mean no offense in saying this, but where else are we going to get the money from in order to keep supporting the work that we do want to see happening from behavioral health if the state does not actually solve these problems? So I'm concerned that I feel we're moving forward with status quo from the board's perspective. And I don't want to micromanage. I know that you have potentially a hiring freeze within your own department. I don't want to apply that from a board perspective. That just creates more hurdles to happen, and it just becomes micromanaging. But I feel like there's not any single safe guardrail that I can rely on to ensure that we don't come back and say we need $2 more million or so on and so forth. Again, I'd love to hear from my colleagues. I don't want you to respond on something that I'm just simply saying myself.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't know how we could task them with putting a guardrail or coming up with a guardrail on our own. I mean, the variables of the state, you know, you could put a crystal ball up here and we could not have any good certainty and all of that. Anecdotally, she's already not flying positions. She's already like being proactive in a weird way, in a kind of a reverse proactivity of doing cost control. And I think that's appropriate. If admin had some ideas on this, I think I saw a hand raised. I'd love to hear it, because it shouldn't just fall on BH, it shouldn't just fall on us. If this is a structural thing we need to address sooner than later, I want to be sensitive to what you're saying. I just don't know what we can or should do other than what we've been doing. You know, we did the reserve, we did the loan. We're not flying positions, and we're just all holding our breath. But it seems like a bigger kind of state issue that we don't really have control over. So to invent a guardrail for something we don't fully understand and certainly can't predict, I don't know where we would go with that. Does admin have anything to add on this? No? Yes, no?
I can only say what we have already, this is not the first time we've heard of the possibility of a guardrail, and it has been difficult to come up with anything that would be functional for both the board and the department. We did go into the idea of maybe lowering the department's budget to what would potentially be reality until the new funds come in, but then they wouldn't be able to spend the new funds unless we came back to the board either during a budget hearing or a standard meeting with a resolution to increase their appropriations to now release the funds so they can spend it. Now, there is also where this is a non-general fund department, so they are limited by what the cash is in their budget unit and fund. And if they do not have the cash, the payments will not be made by the auditor's office, period. That's the last resort. That's not really a guardrail, that's just a fact of a business. So unfortunately, I just wanted to tell you what we've looked at least parts of what we've looked at, and we don't have a good idea for what a guardrail would look like at this stage.
And I'll just go ahead and finish so that we can move forward or continue the conversation depending on what everyone wants. With the budget growing and adding of a position, I can't say yes to this budget. If it was the same as it was the year before and there was a swap of one position, I would feel much more comfortable in saying yes. Still uncomfortable, but I don't want to cut anything out. I had really hoped at one point, and maybe that's coming in the future, of what's mandated by the state that we have to do versus what's not mandated, to see how we can better maneuver through these issues of not getting paid. But today, what I have in front of me, I feel like we're increasing the budget with appropriations, and my saying yes means I approve of you spending all of that, and I cannot possibly say yes to that. And adding positions in a time where you owe money to the general fund and to social services, I also cannot say yes to that, and I'll leave it at that.
Just follow up, because I'm not totally privy to where the discussions are at with the opioid settlement, but, you know, it wouldn't be a guardrail, but it'd be a Band-Aid or two if there was direction to staff to, you know, research additional use of opioid settlement money, or take a fresh look at, you know, we don't have a lot of cannabis taxes, but, you know, if there was direction to staff to look for Band-Aids as opposed to guardrails, and bring that back when we do final, would that help?
I mean, I think if things can carry on or get exacerbated and worse from the state perspective, we're going to have to find those Band-Aids, but I don't want to find something that's not needed at the moment. I just, I don't know how to answer that right off the top.
Okay.
If I may, I can confidently say it is not getting worse. It is improving. It is very incremental. We have not been paid yet back a huge backlog while they were in figuring everything out, but it's resumed, and we're clearing backlog right now, even back to, for SUDS, 2021-22, believe it or not. And that is entirely on the state. They have recently been more responsive, which I'm happy about, at a very high level of leadership, and we've seen resolution of some of those issues, and I think that we're on a forward trend now. I completely appreciate how tenuous this is, and I feel that it's, of course, my duty as the director to make sure that whatever we can do to continue to meet the needs of our community. I feel as though all the services that we provide are essential safety net services. And just as with mobile crisis, we saw a dramatic increase in hospitalizations. That's because our community wasn't being adequately served. And so now that we have injection of resources and programming to better meet the needs of our community, we're going, you know, eventually it will plateau and we'll really have full penetration of needs. But this is a very sick community. So I have to balance taking care of this community with our budget realities, but I can confidently say that it is improving, and we are seeing the revenue begin to come in at a rate that is sustainable for us.
And that's what I heard you say in the beginning of your presentation here. And so I know that when we came to the board before to talk about the loan and moving funds around, we were worried, or there was concern that this wouldn't happen. And since you're saying that it's coming on an upward trend, I think that you're doing what you can already by not hiring in those positions and being prepared. I'm fine with that, and I'm fine with moving forward.
Thank you. And you have my word, we'll maintain our, that's the word, hiring freezes internally, just as we have been to manage. And I mean, we've really micromanaged the heck out of our staff with costs. We've delayed all travel, training, anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. Our staff are definitely feeling it and aware, you know, that these are tighter times. So we'll continue to implement those measures.
How many positions are you freezing at the moment?
All of the vacant ones.
And how many is that again?
Oh, 27%. I want to say that's like 20 positions about for the mental health side. Yeah, and so we evaluate it essentially all the time, but on a monthly basis, we're like, okay, where's our cash flow? How are things looking? Balanced against like how the highest need for position. Like for us, I would say right now, one of our highest needs is that BSA position for obvious reasons. And then this is also a weird time. One thing that I have to balance is that the last leg of the race for Cal-AIM is a fully capitated plan rate for mental health plans and for DMC ODS plans. So right now, we've transitioned effective July 1st, 2023 to a fee-for-service model where you provide a service, you get paid. It's pretty simple. In 2028-ish, DHCS has said we're going to gather all of this claims data for each plan, and we're going to do a capitation rate where we say, here's what we think we need to break you off to do business for your members. It's how managed care plans operate. They get a capitated rate, and they're going to transition us to that. And so running up to that, it's been very clear to me that we need to have like 100% penetration rate for our services and provide as much services as needed so that we get a reasonable capitated rate. So it's very hard to like curb services and to shut down costs when you know that you want to, I don't want to say drive up costs, but you really want to show the accurate representation of costs so you don't get a poor capitated rate.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, just want to acknowledge Supervisor Spate's concern on this. You know, it is really challenging to move forward when we don't have control of the situation, and you know, wanting to make sure that we're going to be solvent as we move forward, and it is a big challenge. So I hear your concern, Supervisor, and but I think what we've asked for in the past too is just to keep us updated as this thing keeps moving along between now and September. We've got final, but you know, just continue that on. So yeah, definite concern, but we need to work together, continue on, maybe some more meetings at the state level and opportunities with the chair and the vice chair to talk with our electeds. They'll push some things along too, I think is real opportunity, but yeah, ready to move forward with the requests, but definitely wanted to acknowledge the concerns that are there.
Thank you. I share those concerns.
All right, I see, Supervisor Green.
Just very quickly to your point on capitation. So if we're not filling those positions, that's going to artificially suppress
It drives
our
down
cost.
billing. So if you don't have providers to bill, right, you don't get the true cost of service. And now with the eligibility criteria for youth for mental health, I think I've told the board before, but it's expanded to include any youth that has a history of trauma, whether or not they have symptoms. That's nearly every youth in Lake County. So we could actually, if they wanted it, any and every youth in Lake County could be receiving some form of behavioral health services or supports. And that's the biggest, to me, that's one of my hottest priorities. We believe strongly in investing in the youth, and so a lot of these positions would go towards youth programming as well. You know, we also have a dream of someday doing such a good job providing services to youth that we work ourselves out of a job. I joke, I know that will never happen, but that's truly the end game for me as a career. So to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, the need is there, the need is present, the need has been there for years. So I appreciate the concerns. Yeah, we have to not stare a potential deficit down and not be proactive on it. That said, the point you raised about capitation, if we are overcautious and not filling our budgeted positions and we're not providing those needed services, then that's a different kind of deficit. That's a deficit that we are not adequately serving our community with the available resources we do have. So I encourage you to continue walking that fine line.
And it's this state that's handcuffing us, and I keep bringing this up at RCRC with other supervisors who share the same concerns and issues with that, so.
Thank you for doing that. All right, let's open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? These budget units? I see none on Zoom and no one getting up. And if it's possible to entertain splitting mental health from the alcohol and other drug services and alcoholism program services, that would be greatly appreciated.
So I'll move to approve budget 4014, mental health.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay.
I move to approve budget item 4015 and 4018.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Was there another budget unit? Do we have another one? Okay,
Yeah.
I have 3 here, so I'm going to guess there's only 3.
just making sure. Thank you.
If you want more, speak with Mr. Carter.
Okay, man.
All right, so next up, we have child support services, starting on page D97, with appropriations as $2,877,135, presented by Director Widener.
Good morning.
I brought my Deputy Director, Cindy Van Lannen. She assists with the budget. All right, I'm going to give a quick overview of our department. The Department of Child Support Services is responsible for establishing paternity, child support, and medical support orders and enforcing those orders. As circumstances change, the department also modifies child support orders to get right-sized orders that are enforceable. The department strives to put children first by helping parents assume responsibility for the economic and social well-being, health, and stability of their children while recognizing the value of improved relationships with both parents. I wanted to mention that we did receive a last-minute budget notification from the state child support office that the governor made a revision at the end of May. We are looking at a decrease in our allocation. However, the decrease will be absorbed and there are no potential layoffs within our department. Our final allocation letter will be received before September. So it's approximately going to be around $84,000. And so we're able to absorb that into our budget.
How are you absorbing it?
In our expenditures or possibly eliminating a position.
And
So
a
we
vacant
haven't decided,
position?
But, I'm sorry?
A vacant?
A vacant position, yeah, no layoffs. Yeah.
Does it look like this change in allocation is going to continue forward for the next
We
few
don't
years?
know, I missed the meeting on the 17th, I wasn't in the office, so I have to reach out to my regional administrator and find out what happened, but we don't know if it's a one-time decrease or if it's ongoing. So we're not positive on that yet.
Okay.
But we're able to manage it.
Okay.
The decrease. I also would like to mention that, and I'm sure it's probably going to be mentioned in the position allocation, that we were asking for our account technician be changed to a flex position, that it be an accounting technician to an accounting technician senior. So I just wanted to make sure that, okay, all right. Didn't want
Yes.
it to
You got
be
the thumbs
forgotten.
up.
Okay. And I'm open for any questions, if the board has any questions.
All right. Thank you very much for the summary. We kind of figured that something would be coming along this way
Very
from
last
the budget changes. I know that's already been a struggle in the past with us writing letters, trying to make those changes happen. Please keep us up to date on what we can do on our end to help out. And glad that you have the ability to absorb it. I know it looks like you have 4 vacancies at this moment in time. Always nice to have somebody at the desk next to you, but
Yes.
at this moment in time, at least there's a way to absorb that.
Yes.
Let's hope that it's not for the next 3 years
Yes.
rather than just
We're
one.
hoping.
We'll see. So thank you very much. I have no questions. Everything looks normal growth, normal everything to me. So thank you very much for your budget.
Thank you.
Let's open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? No hands in Zoom. No race to the microphone in the chamber. Bring it back to the board for action.
Move to approve Budget Unit 2112 for Child Support Services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Next up, we have Health Services, starting on page D153 with Jail Medical, with appropriations of $4,479,296, presented by Director Arden.
Good morning.
Morning. Well, thank you for having me. So we're going to get started. I think we're going to kind of tag team this. Rainey's going to do jail medical and then the veteran services, and I will take care of the other programs.
Okay, so budget unit 2304, jail medical services. This provides for a contract with WellPath, formerly known as California Forensic Medical Group, or CFMG. They deliver medical care in the correctional facility. And it looks like our final budget, or I guess this is the pending budget. It looks like that remains the same. Proposed budget, sorry, thank you. That remains the same. And then, did you want me to do vets now, or did you want to do that in order?
Yeah, we'll do it in order. Okay, moving on to environmental health. Oh, thank you. Environmental health provides consumer protection for retail food, public pools, spas. They're also in land use. Some of their accomplishments this year. Also, I'm hoping this goes pretty smooth since I just did a presentation to you guys a few weeks ago. So a lot of this I don't want to recover, but feel free to ask questions at the end. Some of their accomplishments, developed and hosted a food safety management certification course for the restaurants. And then, as you guys know, about a month ago, we got started with implementing the health space electronic health record. For environmental health, currently they're carrying around a 25% vacancy rate. I do believe they have one candidate in the pipeline. And then for this year, with some of the proposed changes in their budget, is implementing the software EHR. Other than that, there's no other allocations or change with environmental health. Any questions on environmental health? That one's pretty standard and pretty easy. I think one other thing that they're looking at is revising the fee schedule this coming year, and then potentially doing TRL enforcement if that gets passed in the future. So.
Just a quick request, if you're going to bounce around budget units, can you call out the page numbers and budget unit numbers as we go so I can follow along?
Oh, my apologies. That was budget unit 4010.
Yeah, I found it. That was on D226.
I thought we were going in order.
It's a big book. You're all over the map.
Fair enough. Yeah, we've got a lot. Moving on to budget unit 4011, public health, or what? Oh, page D229.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know what it looks like on your guys' side.
We have it.
So the public health budget, so HIV surveillance, emergency preparedness, immunizations, communicable disease control, oral health program, tobacco control program, vital statistics. Those are the pretty much the most commonly used programs in public health. As you guys know, launched the home visitation program with and then getting started with community health workers. And then one of the big changes you'll see in this budget is adding in the medical unit van, which was approved. That was around, what, $460,000 if I recall. Yep. In terms of allocations, we really kind of just traded a lot in this budget unit. So we're adding a deputy director, as we're going through our org chart revisions. We're adding some additional community health workers. We're adding a coordinator position, Safe RX position, an epidemiologist, and then we've given back some HSNs, a few HPSSs, and then a couple registered nurses or PHNs. So we're giving a few of those back, so we're kind of flip-flopping some of those. And we might use the community health workers, for instance, instead of the RNs, which are a little cheaper for communicable disease control, because you don't have to be a public health nurse to do communicable disease control for like case investigation and contact tracing. So as mentioned, just doing an org chart restructure, a lot of that's going into effect with this new budget come July 1. Some other things that we've added to this budget is potentially finding a clinic space, really trying to target Clear Lake area to have, one, we're short on space in the office, and we're implementing remote work, hopefully in the next week or so too. But I'd like to have some space in Clear Lake to help provide some services there. We also are adding in a backup public health officer contract for around $34,000, if I recall correctly. We're looking at, in the future, changing out maybe one of our office spaces or kitchen to do a remodel and make that like a lab or immunization clinic room. And then, of course, as we move into expanding our services, we need an EHR, and I think we've identified a cheap one, so hope to be implementing that soon in the near future. Any questions on that budget?
Go ahead and keep going.
Okay, seeing none.
Just one clarification. You mean you're eliminating positions? You said you're giving back or trading?
Trading.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
all right.
just trading.
Wash.
Yeah, I think it ended up, yeah, I think that's the correct term. It's a wash, I believe. And then did I say what the vacancy rate was in that unit? I think we're at 35% vacancy rate.
Yeah.
In the public health unit. Yeah.
And trading out those positions
Huh?
will help with the vacancy rate, you think?
Potentially. The community health workers should be a little easier to recruit, I hope. So, and then we do have some people in mind for some of the positions that we are creating. And I think we have I think actually technically right now we have 3 candidates in the pipeline right now. So fingers crossed that that continues to go smooth. That includes director of nursing position, public health nurse senior position, and then the Safe RX program. So fingers crossed all that goes smooth. That will lower that vacancy rate a little bit.
Did have a question on page D231 under revenue, line item 53-80. So the actuals in 22-23 were about $4 million. We adopted $8 million in the current budget, and we're going to stick to that request roughly for this with an admin adjustment of $759. So did we get a big chunk of money? Is some of that opioid money or what?
I'm sorry, which line item was that?
Looks like 53-80, it's the third line down under revenue on page D231.
On revenue, is that the COVID funds? Or is that the, I mean, is that the ban?
It's all of our grant funding.
Oh, okay, so the past cited funds, okay. So some of the things that you guys have approved probably this year, does that include the Safe RX vending machines? And, okay, so $30,000 and $15,000 for the Safe RX program, and then $400-something thousand for the community health worker expansion project.
Right, thank
which
you.
I think that was back in February when I first started.
Big bunch of grants. Okay,
Yes, yeah.
thank you.
Okay, moving on. The Health Services Administration Budget, 4012, page D234. This is basically, as it says, the administration over public health, environmental health. So all the fund positions, they get to oversee the management of it. We formalized the strategic plan, and then recently we've implemented the program sheets to help streamline our time recording process, which, as you guys know, we were about to spend a lot of money on Persimmon. And it was also a headache. It was not as streamlined as we had hoped, so we went more towards an Excel spreadsheet. The only other major change really in this one is that we've added in some money, around $40,000 for an audit contract. I think that was something I talked about 3 weeks ago that I'd like to have to help keep us in compliance. Any questions with that one? Okay. And then the last one is tobacco education, budget unit 4016, page number D245. No major changes. This is just basically one grant that comes in that helps provide education for the community.
Okay, and then finally, we have Veteran Services, which is Budget Unit 5321. That's on page D279. Veteran Services provides counseling, support, and benefits support and assistance applying for, veterans benefits. Apologies, I'm a little nervous. And they have a couple of major outreach events every year. Their budget actually it looks like it's decreasing a little bit for this year. But it's a very small amount, the
They have
change.
one vacancy.
They do have one vacancy, yes.
comments or questions?
If I can just back up to 4016, does that budget include, I know Tuesday we just approved a grant application, so if we get that grant, is that plugged in there? No, okay.
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Oh, and I do want to say we've also received some good news. It does not seem like our future public health funds are going to get cut. So both the legislature, the Senate, and the House have approved to retain those funds. We're just waiting on a governor's signature. Fingers crossed.
We shall see what happens in the long run. I do have a quick question, and that's the increases that we've seen in your position allocations for public health and health administration just over the years. And I've got a feeling because, like, for example, in 2021, we were at 31.3. Now we're at 41 for health and for public health. And then same thing, 2021, it was 8 for health administration, and now it's 12. I feel like some of that came from the increased needs during COVID-19. I know that we had a lot of grant funding in order to make that possible. Have those been turned into covered position allocations for ongoing funds, or is it still highly reliant on grant funding every single year?
So we have shifted those positions to other projects that are covered under other grants. 3 of the HPSSs that we're removing and swapping with other positions were initially allocated to COVID. At least 2 of them were. And so there's been some shuffle there too. The grant funding, all of our positions, or almost all of our positions, are reliant on grant funding every year, so.
There were like 3 or 4 very large COVID grant funds that have come in since about that timeline. And so, yeah. And then we also had future public health start last year. Okay, and then how many positions were funded with that? 4 or 5?
Positions that were filled, I believe it was 3.
Okay.
There may have been 4 or 5 in the grant initially.
Yep, and we have a couple additional, like the epidemiologist position this year. Sorry.
And I'm not too concerned overall. I just wanted to check in because I know there was a huge influx of money during that time period, and if the grants keep being available and you can keep that staffing, that's awesome. I just felt like it was such a huge growth and then a kind of a pullback, and we're having that tug of war as we speak with the budget, and I'm glad that it seems to be going in the right direction, so we'll see what the final one looks like. But that was my only question that I had.
Several of the grants have been extended into 25 and some even into 26. So yeah, we are probably going to get a little pinched when that money runs out. The demobilization process probably wouldn't have gone the way I would have liked it if I was here. But at the same time, I think they did take advantage of those funds to retain some staff members that were good and that could fill some roles.
Okay. And I do want to share my concern as well about your vacancies, and hope that the changes you're making will help fill in some of those vacancies.
I think that's only fair that you grill me a little bit on that one as well.
I think it's what you inherited when you got here. I think COVID had a huge hit on that department as a whole. I think there's a lot of explanations to explain why it is what it is, but I know that you can't do the job that we're expecting you to do if you don't have the team that you need to have to make it happen.
So, yep, and fingers crossed, I think recruiting is going pretty well so far. So,
good to hear.
We'll continue to chip away at it.
All right. If there's no further comments or questions, open it up for public comment. I see no one in Zoom and no one getting up in the chamber, bringing it back to the board for action. And we have a CAO.
So this is one of the ones that I talked to you earlier, Chair Sabatier, about a budget book issue. The department is not aware of it, and it's not going to affect you guys directly. So if you look on page D154, the 8080 account is correct. Well, for whatever reason, that's not what's in the system currently. So something
Is that geomedical?
Tweaked, we'll call it. Well, glitched, tweaked, same. So what's in the system is negative 762,600, which that's revenue coming in, but that is incorrect. So we would need to fix that by increasing 8080 by $508,400, when this is a general fund budget unit, so it will, the overall general fund appropriations will go up by $508,400 as well. So the system is wrong, but the budget book itself on that D-154 is correct. If you go to the beginning pages where it shows the overall Fund 1 amount, that's off by $508,400 because of this system issue.
Okay.
Did any of that make sense?
And then, Stephen, do we need to talk, I don't think Director Jones really discussed it very much. I think she hinted at it, but do we need to talk a little bit about the grant that we're working with her department?
You mean Path 3?
Yeah, the Path 3 with the jail medical.
That would go into this budget unit for final.
Huh?
It would go in during final budget September
Okay.
hearings.
Okay. All right.
And just to respond, not 100% clear, other than you're making some changes to 8080 on the appropriation side, which doesn't change the overall, but there's another report where that was correct, and on here it's not.
The report that is correct is the department-specific one.
Yeah.
Which the system doesn't actually read that. So the overall general fund with this change would go up by $508,400 in appropriations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And then one last note that I missed. I don't believe we have reserves, but I think we have rollover from realignment funding, so I forgot to mention that. Is that all of them? Which ones do we use realignment for? All of them? Okay, public health.
Yeah, I don't see reserves.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't hear anything that would require a motion as amended, so if there's nothing further, I move to approve budget units 2304, 4010, 4011, 4012, 4016, and 5321.
Second.
As amended by...
It does need to be amended for 23, budget unit 24.
Not in the budget narratives. When we get to
The system has it differently than the actual budget book does. So technically, the system's what they're
I do need
approving,
an
or
as
the piece of
amended
paper that's
for
right here.
2304.
The book, then it's fine. We'll fix it internally.
Okay, so the original motion stands.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yep.
And I just want to remind that if you look at the budget hearing schedule that we have, it does provide the page numbers for you to be able to quickly move on to where that information is. And next, we have Registrar of Voters, Budget Unit 1451, found on page D39. Good morning.
Good morning. Maria Valadez, Registrar of Voters. I'm here to present Budget Unit 1451. The Registrar of Voters Office is responsible for conducting all federal, state, county, municipal, and local district elections in Lake County while following strict federal and state election laws and regulations. This department is responsible for all components of election management, administration, including voter registration, poll worker recruitment and training, locating and reserving polling place locations which meet accessibility requirements, ballot creation, voting system security, ballot processing and vote tallying, community outreach and voter education, candidate services such as candidate filing, campaign finance filing, as well as filing of initiatives and signature verification. There is one scheduled election for this fiscal year, the November 2024 statewide presidential election, which will include presidential candidates, U.S. Senate, congressional, legislative, runoff of County District 1 supervisor, candidates for City of Clear Lake and City of Lakeport, council members,
school, college, special district directors, as well as numerous state propositions and a couple of local ballot measures. Our budget unit has 5 full-time permanent employees, and during peak election periods, we do employ several extra help employees to help work in the office to assist with the many tasks required in order to certify an election. Our budget is funded primarily by general fund discretionary revenues with limited reimbursement from state and local jurisdictions. It's all dependent. If they go to local jurisdictions go to election, then we seek reimbursement. Otherwise, it's county funded. Reason for significant changes, increase in salaries, as well as the increase to the health insurance employee contribution. And a reason and position allocation changes. I increased one of our elections specialists to a senior position to give increased responsibility, including candidate filing and campaign finance disclosure, which allows for us to be cross-trained and assist the candidates during that period specifically. We have no extraordinary requests at this time, so that concludes my budget presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I see nothing that I have any questions about regarding your budget. I do want to congratulate you on 100% staffing.
Thank you.
Critical and awesome.
I'd like to thank my staff, though, also for assisting with budget preparation. They all get pushed out of their current time frames or for their budget, or I'm sorry, during their work periods to assist with preparing the budget. So I'd like to thank all of them.
Thank you for that. Let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. I see nothing on Zoom and no one getting up in the chamber, bringing it back to the board for action.
Move to approve Budget Unit 1451 for the Registrar of Voters.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and take a let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 11:15.
Seeing you.
Okay, welcome back. We are going to reconvene where we left off. We will be looking at building and safety, code enforcement, nuisance abatement, planning, CSA 23 wildfire benefit. All starts on page D160. Director Turner.
Morning. Mireya Turner, Director of Community Development Department. The vision of the Community Development Department is the provision of exemplary public service through 3 priorities. The first priority is staff recruitment and retention. The second is staff professional development. And the third is achieving fiscal sustainability for code enforcement and planning divisions. This morning's budget, I hope, will reflect these priorities. Starting with the Building Division, Budget Unit 2602, the Building Division ensures development projects are done in compliance with health and safety regulations. They also respond to local emergencies, including wildfire and flood events, to assess structural integrity and safety. Some highlights of this department of accomplishments has been the ongoing training and certifications. They're listed in that budget narrative. Additionally, this division did great work during the February storm events. They were all over the county and working with Cal OES to assess damages done to the structures, mostly in Cobb. There is a reserve fund within this budget. It represents building services that are to be provided in the 24-25 fiscal year, but the applications we've already received, we just haven't been able to get to that point where they're completed yet. Those applications do include 2 apartment complexes, 1 hotel, and a number of single-family residences. For this fiscal year, or this next fiscal year, we are looking forward to transitioning the National Floodplain Insurance Program from Public Works to Community Development. This will improve the efficiency of those various activities, and we actually have staff that have taken it upon themselves to become certified floodplain managers already. But we are working with administrative office and HR to make sure that that is done correctly. We are waiting eagerly to hear the results from the latest CASP exam, which is an accessibility certification that one of our plans examiners has just taken. We do anticipate a positive result, which will then have 2 certified CASP inspectors on our staff, which is awesome. Because when I used to work here years and years ago, like there were like 2 CASP people in the county. So this is great. We will also go live with OpenGov for the Building Division. This is after our planned going live on the code enforcement. That has been our priority so far. And we look forward to providing increased support to the home hardening project as it continues to ramp up. Do you have any questions for me for 2602?
Please go on.
2603, 2604, and 8475 are all dealt with by the same staff, so I'll cover them next. This includes code enforcement, nuisance abatement, and the CSA 23 wildfire benefit. Code enforcement works with our residents and property owners to maintain healthy and attractive residential character in our neighborhoods. They also handle abatement of abandoned vehicles, illegal dumping, illegal cannabis cultivation, and hazardous vegetation. Some highlights from this department over this past year was the awarding of a CDBG grant for disaster mitigation. This funding came from, it was to address damage done during the 2018 wildfires. This grant is $1,123,262 over the next 3 years, which will fund 2 code enforcement officer positions, 1 for hazardous vegetation management, the other for substandard housing. It will also fund 1 office assistant and the vehicle and the various technology that will be required for these staff members to do their jobs. We have also been awarded the Cal Recycle grant $250,000 over the next 2 years to focus on illegal dumping. This will partially fund one current staff member, but the abatement funding is to target our larger, more expensive abatements in cases of like hoarding in houses, things like that. There is an unfunded position currently for a code enforcement officer. We have been waiting until we had the funding available in order to place that. We're looking forward to a few things this next year. Code enforcement was our priority in getting started with OpenGov, which is our electronic permitting system. We do anticipate going live with that on July 1st. This will also increase the efficiency within our internal systems, as well as serve to inform the public on questions that they may have for code enforcement cases. We're also going live with Data Ticket. This is the firm, the agency that handles collections of citations and fines. We were conservative in listing the amount of revenue we anticipate for this next fiscal year because there is a time required to really get them up and running, as well as the time it requires to go through the collections process with each citation or violation that we will send them. So what we're really hoping is that we underpromised, but we'll overperform on that one. We are also continuing to work with the tax collector and the auditor's office to get the banking part that's going to be required to launch this program settled, and that is just pending approval of our department's policies and procedures for the fiscal. But we do anticipate going live by the end of July. Wait, there's more. If the board approves the COPTER program stands for Community-Oriented Policing and Targeted Restoration. And it is based on lessons learned from the Roadmap Task Force pilot project that the board approved a few years ago. The COPTER program, instead of a 2-year pilot program, is going to be 3 years. And it's shifting the focus from Clear Lake Oaks over to now the Nice and Lucerne communities. As presented to the board previously, code enforcement staff, of which it will fund 2 positions, they will focus on the Nice and Lucerne area, while the sheriff's office will have additional flexibility to follow any criminal elements that they find in Nice and Lucerne as they move up and down all over the North Shore. The CSA 23 wildfire benefit. This is a pilot project in the Rivieras. We will continue to do abatements this year, and our department does plan to bring a presentation to the board after this fire season to discuss lessons learned from this project and also next steps for hazardous vegetation management countywide. Additionally, we are continuing to work on a fiscal sustainability plan for code enforcement to be revenue and grant funded within the next 2 fiscal years. It's ambitious, but it does support our goal of achieving fiscal sustainability. Any questions for those 3 budget codes? If not, I'll move on to planning.
Looks like Vice Chair
I was
Crandall.
just going to comment, actually. I'll be going to Sacramento on the 2nd to testify for AB 491, which will probably help your department. It deals with illicit grows and fines up to seizing the property.
That's very good news. Thank you. In the future, we also would like to revisit our citation and fining program specific to cannabis to allow for a notice of violation and citation immediately rather than going through the 10 days as is currently structured. So we're looking forward to bringing that to the board in the future for your consideration. And if I can be of any assistance with any data you might need for your appearance, we'd be happy to talk to you further about that.
Excellent.
I had a question going back to 2603 on page D166. there was a state aid adjustment. What was that about?
166 state aid.
Could you be more specific about what line item you're looking at?
It's second line,
It's
54-90.
54-90.
They had $500,000 and change. Admin took it away. Admin's very mean. So
In this case, they are not. This was for added clarity. The revenue was moved from 5490 to now 8080, which shows as a negative expense on appropriations. I'd be happy to defer to Stephen for the additional admin-related input.
Is it Prop 64 stuff?
What's that?
Is it Prop 64 funding?
It's the funding that's coming from the cannabis budget unit, so it's either Prop 64 or cannabis funds. Those are transferred into 8080 because it's not just a cash transfer. It goes into 8080 when there's actually a product being done for the dollars being sent. It's not a you don't want to show a revenue in cannabis and a revenue in this budget unit. So only showing a revenue once. It lowers the overall appropriations, same purpose.
Do you have any further questions,
yeah,
Supervisor?
thank you. And then I'm sorry to skip, but you kind of skipped ahead too. So on page D174 under budget unit 2702, 4 lines down under revenue, I see a big chunk of new revenue anticipated for penalties, forfeitures, about $300K. Is that ramped up enforcement that
Did
you're
you want me to move on to 2702?
I thought you already did.
No, I'm about to hype
I
2702.
believe
in a
you
moment.
Okay.
put together all the code enforcement, and planning has been left out at this moment in time.
All right, my bad. Thank you.
One moment. Okay. 2702, planning. The Planning Division processes development projects to ensure compliance with the community's vision. That's including the general plan, the local area plans, the zoning ordinance, as well as analysis for environmental impacts through CEQA. Some highlights for Planning Division. We launched the Lake County 2050 project, which is an update of our general plan, all 8 local area plans, the climate adaptation plan, and we are also supporting the progress of the Housing Action and Implementation Plan program. Cannabis Ordinance Task Force sent recommendations to the board regarding cannabis-related business types, possible zoning districts, and recommended permit levels. We do have an unfunded position there in planning that is possible that it will come to you later this year as an extraordinary request. We have a number of very complex projects going through planning and anticipated to come to planning within this next fiscal year. We're looking forward to an APGP grant, which we have submitted the application, which would fund the housing element as much as it touches our department, but this is a collaborative application, and so we are working with the Deputy CAO of Housing through the administrative office to help move along some housing goals, as well as the Lake County Community Foundation, which is focused on provision of affordable housing through the use of 3D printing. So I'm looking forward to bringing you good news about that one. We're hopeful. Additionally, we will seek funding for the Aggregate Resource Management Plan, which is also part of our general plan, but was not included in the Lake County 2050 at this point. We also look forward to completing the cannabis policy update with a draft ordinance to the board by the end of this calendar year, and to continue with the Lake County 2050 project, including draft local area plans available by the end of this calendar year. I have just a couple thank yous. I would like to, community development does not operate in a silo. In order to provide good public service, we rely on the collaborative and the cooperative natures of a number of our colleagues in different departments. And so I would just like to express appreciation to those who we reach out to pretty much every day and just their supportive attitude. Additionally, I appreciate the board's support of our department's vision. Most recently, an example of that was the approval of bringing on a new staff services analyst. He will focus on grants and ongoing contracts, and it is part of developing our grants program for fiscal sustainability. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any other questions or comments? Supervisor Green?
If this is, we're on 2702 now, so that, now my question is under revenue, the fourth line down, 3190. You're anticipating a whole bunch of new penalties that we haven't collected in years past.
So that was actually entered incorrectly. It should be on 5490. So that is one of our recommended changes.
Oh, just push it down a line? All right, thank you.
Correct.
So a couple of things. Appreciate you giving us some details on where you are with the process to kind of recoup some of the funds from the work that you're doing out there, whether it's planning and ensuring that we are getting the full payment of the amount of hours that your staff are actually working on the projects. I know that there is in planning a I don't have the information in front of me. I know I sat down with the CAO's office and staff and asked some questions, that there was a spike at one point of the amount of general funds compared to the revenues created by the services being offered. I have concerns of the continued use and want to make sure that we are going to get to that point where we can make people pay for the services they're requesting. Especially, I have a bit of discomfort in the sense if it's for development or personal gain or benefit from somebody coming to your office and asking for these permits. At what point is it a gift of public funds if we're not actually making them pay for the full amount of work that staff is providing to them? I don't want to look in the past. I want to look in the future and ensure that we get to that point. Similarly, for code enforcement, one of, I think, our missed opportunities with Roadmap Task Force, and one that I will absolutely, full support of Copter and expanding it, but it's again that revenue piece of an addition of fines, where right now what we're doing is we're paying to do the work that someone else should be doing, and they're supposed to pay us back for that work, but there's no additional teeth. There's no fines to say, hey, you could have paid $2,000 and taken care of this, or now you got to pay us $2,000 plus whatever the fines are. We need to change people's behaviors, because we should not be continuously taking responsibility of other community members. We need to get them to take care of those responsibilities. And again, I know you're trying to get there, but I'm concerned that what I see are very small anticipated revenues from these fines, when there should be a much more elevated number, in my opinion. From what I understand, you're close by August. You said the end of July. You should be ready with that. I want to see every cannabis violation. I want to see everybody who's gone past their 30 days or whatever notice. Maybe there's extensions. But I feel like it's a missed opportunity to get changed behavior to help your team, because your team is working hard to clean up our communities. But I think we're working too hard when we're not trying to get other people to fall in line with everything that we're asking them to do and meet us at the halfway point. So I know I've had a conversation with you via email. I would like to get an update on our final budget as to where we are, just to get a better understanding that, yes, the process is going, we are doing these things, we have all the contracts in place since last November. I want to see those things happening, and the reason for bringing it up is obviously twofold. I want to see a behavioral change in our community of not violating these codes and making our communities look like what they look like. But I'm concerned about our general fund when it comes to the state, and general fund's is going to start being asked from many different departments potentially on, hey, we want to keep our services, how are you going to help us with general fund? Not to say that's what we're going to do, but I think we're going to get a lot of asks. And I would like to focus on reducing that and increasing those fines, fees, and everything else, because we shouldn't just be doing the work of other people. They should be doing it themselves. And I think we're just missing that opportunity to really make those changes and really have that positive effect on the general fund. So I know that I kind of came in with an idea of what I would want to offer. I'm not going to offer anything other than please bring that back to us in the final budget to let us know where you stand with all those things being implemented, because I think it's really important as we go through this 3-year process with the state where they're looking at such a huge deficit. It's really going to be unknown as to how that's going to impact the general fund as other departments get impacted as well.
I completely appreciate the many demands on the board for the discretionary funds you have available. That is exactly why it's been one of our priorities to develop fiscal sustainability for code enforcement and planning. OpenGov will be a much more effective way for us to track our time for cost recovery, but also so that we can do a more an exhaustive review of planning fees as they stand now to see if there are any changes that would be appropriate. We do look forward as the AVA meetings continue. We actually are hoping for a possibility of a fine for people who come and dump their cars here. That would be great, because I totally get what you're saying as far as we're cleaning up after these people, and there's not really a lot of recourse because it's AVA funded. So, so we fully embrace the idea of holding people accountable for the cost that they are incurring on the taxpayers.
And just want to restate, I think your team, your code enforcement division is working really hard. I want to push them to help them not have to work so hard where they're the ones that are really cleaning up the community. We got to get people to meet us.
Thank you.
And
July 1st for code enforcement. I don't have a specific date for the other two divisions, but after code enforcement, then we're bringing building up second, and then planning will be last. Unless I am mistaken. End of calendar year for probably building. I have
someone's checking in on you.
I have multiple staff watching and texting me to keep me on the straight and narrow.
My last comment is, and I'm going to check in with ACAO Carter, the position allocation for planning. It was identified, at least on our paperwork, and I think we'll do a quick adjustment to that as being 12, but when you actually count the numbers, for some reason, one line was not counted, and I believe it should be 17 with an asterisk that once one of your positions resigns or leaves, that you will not be filling in that position, so it'll bring it back down to 16. But for some reason, the 5 asterisks got completely missed in the count, and instead of saying 17, it says 12 at the moment. I just want to make sure we don't put you in a situation where HR says you only have 12 spots.
I'm happy to continue working with HR as we do move on. However, the idea of losing one planner is ill-advised given the workload that our team has. But I'll be happy to discuss that with admin and HR as we move forward.
So are you saying the asterisk is no longer?
That's not my asterisk. I'd have to take a look. One moment. Or I would defer to admin on that one.
Ms. Moreno?
There is one position that's being unfunded. The other one, upon next vacancy, will be unfunded. So there will be 2 planning positions unfunded for a total of 17.
Okay. And if that needs to be reviewed, if things changed, I would say definitely continue to meet with CAO's office and HR just to make sure. But I have no changes other than those comments that I made. Supervisor Green?
And just very briefly to counter some of those comments, when we do come back and we talk about fines and asset forfeiture and stuff like that. I don't share the enthusiasm you have expressed. I've seen this movie before in Fresno County and other places, especially on cannabis prohibition and cannabis eradication. You know, we had a problem for decades in this county and across the state, and those problems popped up even when we were still arresting people and throwing them in prison for 10 and 20 years at a time. The idea that we're going to fine people into compliance and make a meaningful stab at changing their behaviors creates additional work on staff, creates additional due process concerns for those people being cited and the non-resident property owners for those properties that aren't in compliance. To me, by far, the better bang for the buck is continued public outreach. And so if you're going to bring back something explaining how we're going to drop a whole bunch more fines on people, I'd love to see an additional item saying, what kind of public outreach are we doing? Because whether it's a personal cultivator who doesn't even know we have a personal cultivation ordinance, whether it's the old school collective that is now operating under a medical portion of our personal use ordinance, there's lots of education that still needs to happen, and it's not self-evident, it's not easy to find on our website, and if we're going to modify behaviors, by far, education is the more effective way to do it than coming in after the fact and trying to apply a bunch of fines and fees and what have you, and that will ultimately end up in a lot of appeals and a lot of work on staff. So that's my comment.
And just to let you know, fines and other things are already within the code. It's a matter of having the capacity within your staff to be able to do that. I know internally there has begun some fines, but the data ticket process will alleviate some of those processes where it can be passed on to a third party that can then handle the collection and so on and so forth. So I appreciate the efforts that's been made. I think data ticket will give us that bigger window, but we already have all of those things within our code to be able to do the fines. We have limited ourselves at this moment in time due to capacity and being able to follow up, and if we're doing fines and not collecting them, they're pretty much useless.
Funds for public outreach and education are also included in the nuisance abatement grant that we have, and that will happen. We are happy to look at possible options for grant funding regarding public outreach for cannabis. However, one thing I wanted to point out about our staff is that in code enforcement, it's very important that you come alongside the resident and the property owner first, and we do that very well, and that's how we get a high level of self-abatement and never have to move on to a notice of violation.
Yeah, these are for people that ignore our notice of violations. If there's nothing further, let's go ahead and open it up for public. Anyone wish to speak?
There's another. Don't you have to do the zone of benefit?
No, she talked about it.
You just captured that already in.
Did you have any comments or questions on that?
No.
Okay. Well, I think somebody asked me if I could be the panelist, and then as I clicked, it disappeared. Thank you very much for asking again. Let's open it up for the public. I see nobody moving in the chamber and no hands up in the Zoom room. I'll bring it back to the board for those budget units.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve budget units 2602, 2603, 2604, 2702, and 8475.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Clarification, was there an amendment on that or needed?
That's for the, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Thank you for checking, though.
Yeah. Oh, Lloyd's jumping out, so.
Okay. Looks like we are going to move forward.
So
there was more than just a position allocation.
we need to reopen it.
Please include as amended in the motion.
If we can amend the motion.
I will go ahead. I did ask a question, so hopefully we don't have to go all the way back. So yes, I'd like to add as amended to my motion.
We have an amended motion on the floor.
And I'll second.
That's what I'm asking. Do we need to,
We
do
already
we need to
voted,
reopen
so
it,
we need to
Lloyd, I guess is
rescind
the
it.
question.
We need a motion to rescind first.
So the first step would be, Lloyd Gonzavano, County Council. So the first step would be to clarify if the item has been closed.
I have not moved on yet.
Okay. So in that case, it would be a motion to rescind the motion that approved budget unit 2602, 2603, 2604, 2702, 8475. Rescind the approval of that motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve budget units 2602, 2603, 2604, 2702, 8475 as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Takes a team. Thank you. We're going to move on to our sheriff and public safety. We have a number of budget units that I'm not going to read off right now. It starts on page D60. And we have our undersheriff. To walk us through it. It's just a few.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. First, I'd like to obviously thank the CAO's office and our fiscal staff for preparing this budget. We have approximately 21 budgets to go through here. So I'm going to go just kind of a top overview of them, and if there's any questions, then we'll move on to the next ones. So first one we're going to start with is 1781, Sheriff's Facility and Construction. As you guys are aware, this is the budget dealing with the National Guard Armory and the ARPA funds for renovating that. We're moving forward with that, and I'm sure as your board is aware, we have moved on to the next phase of that with Lars and Dewberry Design. Are there any questions on that?
No questions.
Our next budget is the 2201, which is the sheriff coroner budget. This one is under state law. The sheriff is responsible for delivery of law enforcement services to the unincorporated areas of Lake County. You guys have all heard that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Just to kind of go back to a lot of that, appreciate the board support in that. We're currently reduced our I believe last budget hearing, we were at probably a 30 or 31% vacancy rate. We're down to 26 now. We have 5 vacant positions in the patrol division, and just kind of jump ahead a little bit over in corrections, we're down to 3, and we're down to 2 vacant positions in dispatch. And we currently have all of our deputy sheriffs patrol out of corrections and dispatch and back on the street. We've been able to transition into a team concept for our patrol division, which is beneficial to the sheriff's office and the community as far as supervision is concerned and the collaboration of investigations, rather than having that modified schedule that we were working. We were back into a team concept. So that's good. And then to kind of piggyback on what Mireya was saying, the copter program that was, it's outstanding. We saw how it worked in Clear Lake Oaks, and we were able to collaborate with code enforcement and then kind of modify that to our new copter program and pushing forward with that, where we have a little more flexibility, lessons learned, and move that into more of a North Shore area. And it gives the sheriff's office and the sergeant and deputy assigned to that position a little more flexibility to kind of maintain that work that we've done in Clear Lake Oaks, and then also expand that into the Nice and Lucerne areas and focus on those community-oriented problems in those areas. So we appreciate the board's support in that. Any questions in 2201?
Not at this moment.
In 2202, dispatch. Again, Lake County Sheriff's Dispatch Centers services Lake County Public Safety, access point, emergency 911 calls for fire, law, and medical services received there. And then center is staffed 24/7 days a week and 365 days a year. I have all the stats in here. I'd be happy to provide if you'd like them. But again, in the interest of time and everybody's since we have so many budgets to go through. Again, we were able to get our deputies out of there, and we are, again, just down one supervisor position and one dispatcher position in there now. So we're making good progress in those areas through, again, the support of the board and then some of the recruitment efforts that we're really pushing hard in the agency. So
Excellent.
And then 2203, Sheriff's Marijuana Suppression. Per grant requirements, monies received from the DEA and the DSEP program go to funding this. Our focus, again, on this is those illegal marijuana grows. That's our main focus on this. And then those that are on rural lands or federal lands, U.S. Forest Service, BLM, in those areas.
Please keep going.
In 2204, Sheriff Court Security. The Sheriff provides executive protection for the judges and county court security. The functions performed with a combination of permanent full-time employees and retired annuitants supervised by a full-time sergeant. With the, we're staffed in there with all of the positions, and then again, you guys, I'm sure the funding comes from state courts for that position, for that budget. 2205, Sheriff's Marine Patrol. The Sheriff's Marine Patrol provide enforcement in California Harbor and Navigation's code enforcement to county waterways. The division is staffed by one full-time sergeant and then again retired annuitants in that position. The division it also enforces the county quagga mussel invasion species ordinance. And I have stats, but I'm just kind of going, not really going into those because of the number of budgets we have.
Please keep going. You got a good pace.
The Sheriff's Rural and Small Counties. Monies received in this budget are funded entirely with AB 443 funds. The Sheriff's Office receives about $500,000 annually. Monies in this unit are designed to enhance law enforcement services in rural communities. They are designed to supplement existing and mandatory services. 2207, Sheriff's Civil. Fees for this budget are collected pursuant to Government Code 26746, 26731, and 26746.1. The division is responsible for the service of civil papers. A civil division processed and served hundreds of subpoenas, notices, and summons, complaints, restraining orders, earnings, withholdings, order claims, levies, evictions, and other services. 2208, Sheriff's Blood Alcohol. This budget pays for the blood, breath, and urine analysis for any testing conducted in the unincorporated areas of Lake County, regardless of which agency administers the test. These are by government code through fines and fees from courts. Sheriff STC, this is reimbursement from, or partial reimbursement from BSEC for training that we send DSCs to throughout the year to maintain their required training standards and then all of the initial core and 832 training that they're required to do. Sheriff's automated warrants. Monies in this budget are collected by the courts per a 853.7 California Penal Code and 40508.5 of the California Vehicle Code. Automated warrant system is used to provide a countywide automated warrant system. 2213, Sheriff's DNA. Monies in this budget are collected by both the courts and probation per Government Code 76104.6 as a result of Proposition 69. And then 2214, Sheriff's Asset Forfeiture. Monies in this budget are from seized property in accordance with the equitable sharing agreements between the County of Lake and the Department of Justice and Treasury. Monies are also received from the state and local forfeitures. Sheriff's Inmate Welfare, 2215. Services provided by these funds are under Penal Code 4025. Are used primarily for the benefits, education, and welfare of the inmates confined within the jail facility. The budget unit also provides funding for a deputy sheriff corrections assigned to coordinate inmate programs. (2216) Sheriff's Pool Vehicle Replacement. This fund is mileage-based to replace sheriff pool vehicles for trainings and then also for our detectives and unmarked vehicles. (2217) Sheriff's Pursuit Vehicle Replacement. This is same as the pool vehicles, mileage-based, and it is used to replace our pursuit and marked vehicle fleet as those vehicles age out and time out, mileage out. 2218 Sheriff Search and Rescue. This budget functions strictly on donations. Main beneficiary was donated from the Grace Mazakis Thompson Trust. Under the terms, her trust, 25% of the monies were designated to be made available to the Lake County Search and Rescue with the sheriff as the beneficiary. As you guys are aware, Sheriff Search and Rescue not only provides search and rescue services in Lake County, but is also available for mutual aid support and request to other counties and vice versa from those counties. And 2220 Sheriff's Post. This is same as STC. These are partial reimbursements that we get from the California Commission on Post for trainings that we send our deputies to, mandated 24-hour trainings, perishable skills training, and then whatever trainings that are required as what their job, per their job assignments, detectives, narcotics, and so on. In 2221, Sheriff's Local Law Enforcement Block Grant. Monies in this budget are received from federal Burn JAG grant, which are no longer allocated to this budget. 2301, Jail Facilities. Staffing at the facility is made up by a captain, correctional lieutenant, correctional sergeants, and correctional deputies. Food services, medical services, the jail. We have an average rate, we have a bed space of 297 inmates, which is an average daily population in 23-24 of about 220, with a peak high of about 253. And correctional staff are responsible for security, programming, recreation, feeding, and medical attention to the inmates. And that concludes the 21 budgets.
2704.
2704, did I miss that one? Oh, I don't have that one. Office of Emergency Services. Unfortunately, I don't have that one in front of me. Office of Emergency Services coordinates resources and provides emergency resources to the County of Lake.
Thank you for pivoting.
I apologize for that. I thought I had that one.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just going to quickly mention something. And something I feel you missed, which I think is a huge highlight. In your jail facility currently, you have a 90% filled position.
Yes.
That's a 10% vacancy, and I know that we made some changes here. You talked about how the dispatchers and everyone's out of the jail that are deputies, now they're out on the streets. I think that's exactly the kind of outcomes that we were looking for, and really happy that we are where we are. I have to say I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping that we can get a little bit higher on our vacancies that we have on the law enforcement side, but it's hopefully going to keep climbing. It's can't make it all the way to where we want to be right away, but the fact is things are changing, and it's appreciated to see, and definitely having the visual of patrols out and about more than just one is great.
Yeah, and we are progressing in that. In the DSC ranks, we currently have a recruitment that we're running through backgrounds, and then we have another female recruitment that we have, I believe, and I'm going to say this, and I may be a little bit off, I think we have 27 that applied for that. So that is outstanding. And then on the deputy side, we just graduated Deputy Kuhn from the Siskiyou Academy last week. And then we have 2 new deputy trainees that will be starting the academy on July 1st. So we are making progress in that area. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit longer to get the deputies and get them through training, get them up to speed than DSCs, but we're definitely going in the right direction. And with the board support and then some of the pivots we've done with recruitment, we're making progress.
It's greatly appreciated to see all that. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, if I could backtrack very quickly to marijuana suppression. And I see other specialty budgets in here that don't have wages and salaries, but because there aren't any wages and salaries, I'm guessing there's no permanent staff assigned, and it's more of a detail. So can you describe what the current staffing is for marijuana suppression? Is it solely reliant on this grant funding? Are there things we can or should be looking to do within the budget to provide additional resources? Because $195K of grant funding doesn't seem like it's going to be adequate to fit the need, but I don't know. You tell me what the current state is of criminal enforcement against illegal marijuana cultivation, which clearly has a negative impact on our legal cannabis industry, in addition to the code enforcement concerns that CDD is going to pick up. So can you give me the 30-second elevator speech on the current level of staffing and the department's ability to aggressively pursue illegal marijuana grows?
Absolutely. Currently, we have a sergeant and a detective assigned to that position. That is their full-time job, so it's not an ancillary duty. That is where they're assigned and what they do. The sergeant obviously manages the DCEP grant. And Mary Beth can correct me if I'm wrong, but the DCEP grant is used primarily for overtime and then also for helicopter contracts for oversights and what we call stabo operations for very rural areas where we can't get vehicles for getting the deputies in there and then getting the marijuana out so it can be properly destroyed. That's primarily what DCEP is. So the day-to-day hourly funding for the sheriff's office, detective, and sergeant that are in there comes from 2201. Overtime comes from DCEP grant, where we have an operation where we bring in deputies on ancillary duties on their days off to work overtime for DCEP is what covers that from the DCEP grant. We, quite frankly, with the number of grows, we focus on those that are water diversion, that are environmental hazards, that are just egregious grows. We're focused on those. With staffing, if we can improve staffing to the point where we can add another detective over there, we can expand that focus on other illegal grows. But right now, we kind of focus on the big ones because we have a sergeant and a detective in there, and that's a lot of work for them, and they are very, very busy. So we tend to target the very egregious environmental grows at this time.
Thank you.
That's what hopefully AB 491 helps with as well. So we'll see how that goes, and that might be another asset for you.
Awesome.
And thank you for the copter.
Yeah.
All the contributions in those meetings, the discussion, we had a really robust discussion on how we would all approach that, community development, administration staff, you and two other, I think it was a captain and a lieutenant. And so, yeah, it was a really good, robust discussion, and I think the strategy is really hopeful.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? I do want to check in with the CAO's office. Is there any changes at all to the expenses?
No changes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? I see nothing in Zoom, nothing in the chamber. I'm bringing it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve budget items 1785, 2201, 2202, 2203, 2204, 2205, 2206, 2207, 2208, 2210, 2212, 2213, 2214, 2215, 2216, 2217, 2218, 2220, 2221, 2301, and 2704.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
The first of many.
Yeah, first of many.
Thank you very much. So just checking in with the board, we have a number of public works budgets. Do you want to take our lunch now and come back at 1:10, or do you want to take up those public works budgets currently?
I'm always hungry at
All
this
right.
time of day.
So let's go ahead. We got to take a lunch at one point or another. It's either now or after that. So we'll go ahead and take our lunch. We'll come back at 1:10 p.m. and we will reconvene with the Public Works Administration budgets as listed. See you then.